Welcome to my channel. Here, we explore the one thing that connects us all: emotion. The invisible force that drives our choices, shapes our memories, and colors every moment of life. Whether it's joy, sadness, fear, or love, emotion is the thread that ties our stories together. So take a breath and let's dive deep into what it truly means to feel. Motivation. Think about the last time you felt something deeply. Was it a moment of pure happiness or a quiet ache no one else could see? Emotions aren't just reactions, they are reflections of who we are. And in every heartbeat, there's a story waiting to be heard. On this channel, we give those stories a voice, because feeling is what makes us human. Every emotion has a purpose. Anger can protect. Sadness can heal. Joy reminds us we're alive. But too often, we hide what we feel, out of fear, shame, or silence. Here, we choose something different. We choose to feel, to face, to grow. Through stories, reflections, and honest moments, we'll explore what it means to truly understand ourselves and each other. So, if you've ever felt alone in what you're feeling, if you've ever smiled while breaking inside, or stayed quiet when your heart was screaming, you're not alone. This space is for you, a place where vulnerability is strength and every emotion, even the messy, complicated ones, is welcome. Together, we'll learn to sit with our feelings, to listen to them.
Have you ever felt your heart race with fear? Or smiled without meaning to when you're happy? That's not just your heart or your face reacting. It's your brain, the master conductor of your emotions. But how does the brain actually feel? How does it take something invisible, like a memory, a moment, or a thought, and turn it into sadness, joy, anger, or even love? Let's take a deep dive into the emotional brain. Inside your skull is a network of over 80 billion neurons. But when it comes to emotions, the spotlight shines on a tiny group of structures known as the limbic system. At its heart, the amygdala, your brain's emotion detector. It senses threats, lights up during fear, and helps you survive danger. Then there's the hippocampus, which ties your emotions to memories. Ever smelled something and suddenly remembered your childhood? That's the hippocampus at work. But emotions aren't just primitive instincts. Your prefrontal cortex, the smart decision-making part of the brain, also joins the party. It helps regulate how you respond to emotions. You might feel angry, but choosing not to punch a wall, that's your prefrontal cortex talking you down. Neurotransmitters are the messengers of your emotions. Dopamine gives you pleasure and motivation. Oxytocin fuels love and bonding. Serotonin and norepinephrine shift with depression and anxiety. They flood your brain in milliseconds, and just like that, a thought becomes a feeling. But emotions aren't isolated. They're shaped by your past, your biology, your environment, and even your culture. A breakup in Tokyo might be processed differently than one in New York, not because of different brains, but different emotional norms. Even physical pain and emotional pain activate similar areas in the brain. Heartbreak isn't just a metaphor. The brain really does hurt. And guess what? Emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage emotions, can grow. Just like a muscle, your brain can be trained to feel better, respond smarter, and connect deeper. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed, take a breath. Know that your brain is working hard behind the scenes, feeling, processing, adapting. You are not just your thoughts. You are the symphony of every emotion you've ever felt, conducted by the most complex organ in the known universe. This is how the brain feels emotions.
Every emotion you've ever felt has a neural fingerprint. Think of it like a unique pattern of electrical signals and chemical activity. When you feel joy, specific areas in the brain light up differently than when you feel fear or sadness. These patterns aren't random. They're shaped by your experiences, your genetics, and your biology. Now let's talk about the emotional loop, a feedback system between your brain, body, and environment. Here's how it works. Something happens in your surroundings. Let's say someone insults you. Your senses pick up the tone, the words, maybe even their facial expression. That input is sent to your thalamus, which is like your brain's switchboard. The thalamus routes that information to your amygdala, your emotional fire alarm. If the amygdala senses danger or threat, it triggers a rapid emotional response, like anger or hurt. Meanwhile, your hypothalamus kicks off a chain reaction in your body: increased heart rate, shallow breathing, tight muscles. Then your prefrontal cortex steps in and says, wait, was that really an insult? It tries to evaluate and regulate the emotion. That's the loop. Stimulus, emotional reaction, physical response, rational evaluation, all happening in seconds. And get this, your gut plays a role too. There's something scientists call the gut-brain axis. It turns out your intestines are lined with millions of neurons, often referred to as the second brain. This network communicates directly with your central nervous system. That's why when you're anxious, you feel it in your stomach. Butterflies, nausea, tightness, they're all emotional signals being processed through your digestive system. Let's take a look at emotional memory. Have you ever smelled a certain perfume and suddenly felt nostalgic? Or heard a song and teared up without warning? That's because your brain stores emotional memories in a highly sensory way. The hippocampus, which handles memory formation, works closely with the amygdala. Emotional memories, especially intense ones, are stored more vividly than neutral ones. That's why trauma is hard to forget, and why joy feels so deeply embedded in certain moments. But it doesn't stop there. Your culture also affects how your brain feels emotions. In Western cultures, individual expression is often encouraged, so emotions are outward. In many Eastern cultures, emotional restraint is valued, and the brain adapts accordingly. Your emotional responses are not only wired by evolution, but shaped by society, language, and norms. Let's talk about emotional labeling, the process of identifying and naming what you're feeling. Neuroscience shows that when you put your feelings into words, your amygdala activity decreases and your prefrontal cortex becomes more active. In other words, naming your emotion helps it regulate. Saying, I feel overwhelmed, or I'm frustrated, isn't weak, it's actually neurological control. It's a strategy your brain appreciates. Now, what about complex emotions? These aren't the basics like fear, joy, or sadness. These are mixtures like guilt, jealousy, or awe. These feelings don't live in just one part of the brain. They arise from a cocktail of brain regions working together: emotion, memory, cognition, and social awareness, all at once.
That's why complex emotions are harder to describe and harder to manage. Interestingly, humans are not the only creatures with emotional brains. Animals, especially mammals, also have limbic systems. Dogs feel excitement and fear. Elephants grieve. Dolphins show signs of joy. What makes human brain different is meta-emotion, our ability to feel emotions about our emotions, feeling guilty about being angry, or being proud of feeling empathy. This self-awareness is a unique layer of consciousness. As we continue, remember this. Your emotional brain isn't broken. If you feel too much or too intensely, it's not weakness. It's evidence of a deeply alive, deeply responsive brain. Emotions are not flaws in the system. They are the system. Now, let's explore how emotional regulation works at a deeper level.
Let's talk about something powerful: emotional regulation. This isn't about ignoring emotions. It's about learning how to work with them rather than being controlled by them. The brain has several built-in systems to help you regulate feelings. First, the prefrontal cortex. It's the voice of reason. It helps you pause, reflect, and choose how to respond instead of just reacting. Then there's the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps you focus your attention and detect emotional conflict, like when you're smiling on the outside but anxious on the inside. And finally, the insula. This region helps you monitor internal sensations, your heartbeat, your breath, your gut feelings. It gives you an internal emotional map of what's going on. So, how can you train your brain to better handle emotions? One way is through mindfulness. When you bring your attention to the present moment, without judgment, your brain actually begins to rewire. Studies show that mindfulness meditation increases activity in the prefrontal cortex and decreases reactivity in the amygdala. This means your brain becomes less likely to spiral emotionally and more able to observe what's happening without panic. Another technique is cognitive reappraisal. This is the practice of reframing a situation in your mind. Let's say someone cuts you off in traffic. Instead of thinking, that jerk did it on purpose, you pause and reframe. Maybe they're rushing to the hospital. Your brain reacts differently depending on the story you tell yourself. Over time, this reframing becomes automatic. Your neural pathways literally adapt to your new thinking habits. And then there's the power of social connection. When you talk to someone you trust, when you feel heard and supported, your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone. This doesn't just feel good emotionally, it regulates your nervous system. Your heart rate slows, your stress hormones drop, your brain returns to balance. Human connection is not a luxury, it's a biological necessity for emotional health. Now let's zoom out and talk about mental health. Conditions like anxiety, depression, PTSD, and bipolar disorder aren't just in your head. They're rooted in real, observable brain changes. For example, in depression, activity in the prefrontal cortex decreases, while the amygdala becomes hyperactive.
This makes it harder to make decisions and easier to feel overwhelmed. In anxiety disorders, the brain's fear circuits are constantly on high alert, even when there's no real threat. And in trauma, the emotional brain stays stuck in survival mode. Understanding this isn't about labeling yourself. It's about compassion, knowing that your reactions come from a brain trying to protect you. But the amazing thing, the brain can heal. Through therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, or supportive relationships, the brain can build new connections. Neuroplasticity means that healing isn't just a hope, it's a scientific reality. And remember, you're not meant to regulate emotions alone. Humans evolved in groups. Your nervous system is designed to co-regulate with others. That's why a comforting voice can calm you, why a hug can ground you, and why being understood, really understood, can feel like a reset button in your entire body. You don't have to fight your emotions. You just have to learn how to listen. Because behind every emotion is a message, a need, a memory, a signal. And the more you understand your emotional brain, the more you understand yourself.